Hi, Becky. Nice to see you here. Thanks for coming.
Nice to see you too, Kate. Happy to be here.
I'm glad you are too.
Okay.
Welcome to our homespun studio. I'm glad you decided to talk with us today and get your story out there the way you'd like to present it. What made you come on board with this interview?
Well, first of all, this isn't the first time I've been interviewed. I was even on Oprah Winfrey show a long time ago. This happened to me, and I dealt with it in the 80s. So it still haunts me, and I want to reach out to the people who have experienced this to give whatever help I can to them. I feel I have pretty much dealt with it. I wrote a book about it. I had a lawsuit, and as I said, I've testified before legislatures, etc. So this is my first time talking about it. If I can give anybody anything at all, that's what I'm about. That's why I'm doing this.
What's the name of your book?
A Statute with Limitations Before Me Too. And it has a subtitle. Maybe that's a good place to start. The subtitle is, I Dare You to Look Me in the Eye and Say It Never Happened. And the reason I chose that as a subtitle is because when I took, I was abused by both a psychologist, nun, and a psychiatrist who is not related to religion at all. And when I faced that psychiatrist in the hearing to revoke his license, that was the comment I made when they asked me, what would you like to say? That is exactly what my comment was. I dare you to look me in the eye and say it never happened. So that's why I put that as my subtitle.
You're a brave woman.
I want to talk more about, pardon?
You're a brave woman, courageous.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess it's something you just got to deal with. So it doesn't take over your whole life. And that's what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
I want to focus more though, because the psychiatrist is a male. I don't want to deal with that right now. Okay. I want to deal with the nun. I want to deal with the nun abuse. So my story starts when I was 13 years old. I entered the Aspire Insurance. Do you want me to mention the order?
It's up to you. It's your story.
It was the School Sisters of Notre Dame. And I left that order when I was 23. But about 3 years before I just made the decision to leave, I came out of their very archaic and demeaning formation period. And I was feeling, I wasn't even sure there was a God at that point. And I was extremely depressed. So I was in college taking psychology courses from this School Sister of Notre Dame. And since legally I pursued it, I can call her Sister Olivia. And I felt that a psychologist maybe would be able to help me. So I went to her on a counseling level. And during those early years, what she did, I didn't, first of all, having entered at age 13, I had absolutely no experience with sexuality. We weren't even, I was an all-girls high school. We weren't allowed to date. There were no males around. So I was 13 emotionally. Some of the things she did was she would put her arms up my sleeves and massage my back. And then just towards the end of the interviews or the sessions, she would have me kneel next to her and put my arms around her waist, and she would hold me on her breast. I didn't know what, I mean, I had never been in a psychology or a counseling situation, so I had no idea whether this was part of what they did or not. Eventually, I left because I was extremely depressed, and I continued to see her And of course, it's a very difficult adjustment to regular living when you've been in the convent that long. And she was going to help me through that period. And I was getting better. I got my own car. I actually got a job. I got my own first checking account, first income. But when I went to, I continued to go to school. So I went to Marquette University. And one day I came home and my roommate, who was also a client of hers, was asleep. And then suddenly the phone rings and it's a psychologist telling me that my roommate had just attempted suicide. And there's a knock on the door and the police are there and they take her away. As a result of that, the psychologist who was seeing me told me that I had to see someone else. And she referred me to the psychiatrist who eventually also abused me. I did not deal with it at all until I was hospitalized multiple times, and that story is in my book. That's why I choose a pen name, because there's more shame over having been hospitalized multiple times, possibly, than anything else. I had 3 kids, and I went back to see her, to show her by that time I only had 2, my 2 kids, just as you might go back to see your mother to show them, you know, these kids. And when I did, it was like hitting a brick wall. I just fell apart completely. And I went back to see her. And then she did something that was more than just put her arms around me. She disrobed from the waist up and she started to nurse me. And by that time I was a little smarter. And by the 3rd time she did that, I said, I don't think we're supposed to be doing this. And then she said, yeah, we're not. We won't do it anymore. And I didn't do anything about it beyond that. But I did stop seeing her. The depression continued. I was hospitalized, and at that point I was at the county hospital, and the doctor said, you are not going to get better unless you do something about the 2 therapists who abused you. And first of all, I was shocked. I never considered what the nun had done as sexual abuse. It was pretty obvious that what the psychiatrist who was having sexual intercourse, that what he did was abuse, but I never clicked that what she had done was abusive, and it really opened the door for the further abuse. So anyway, I did then start to do some research. I was in my master's program and I did a lot of research about sexual abuse by therapists. And then I began to realize a lot better that there was something I needed to do. And so I filed a suit with the, first of all, the medical association. They did nothing but discharge the psychiatrist from their professional organization. But then I sent a letter to the licensing people, and the licensing people took on the case. And in that process of going to court, he did lose his license. However, it was restored at the level of the, what do you call that, when they go up one more level? On a legal technicality.
Okay, yeah.
It was on a legal technicality, it was restored. However, it had a long-term effect. When he applied for a job later, he couldn't get it because of this.
Yeah.
And at that point, in the interviews that the state did with the nun, she admitted that she had abused me. But she said she only did it once. So I didn't do anything about the nun because I was so focused on changing the laws about therapists and making it a crime, which it did become a crime in our state. And I'm in the state of Wisconsin, and it is now a crime. And since then, to do this, so I was mostly focused on that. But I began to think more and more about what she had done, and decided I needed to take some action on that too. So she came. I had a friend who had supported me through this whole lawsuit. I wasn't really her client, but she was a psychiatrist, and she had her come to her office so that the two of us could talk. This was not a legal issue, just for the two of us to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came to the office, she admitted she had lied, that she had indeed done it more than once.
Uh-huh.
I then didn't do anything more about it. I wanted just to live my life. It had been pretty miserable being in and out of psychiatric hospitals and attempting suicide, etc. And I had kids, and I wanted to focus on my kids. So I didn't do anything more about her until very recently, when I opened the record from the hearing, because I had always told myself, when I retire, I will deal with it. I'm not going to deal with it till then. So when I opened those records, post-traumatic stress disorder hit.
Sure.
Especially when I read some of their diagnoses, it was just too much. So I went to a psychologist who's helped me a lot, a whole lot. And one of the things I did in that process was to write this book. And she wanted me to, well, I shouldn't say she wanted me to, I wanted to go and confront the order about why they had done nothing when I sent them a letter way back when all this investigation was going on. I sent them a letter telling them what had happened, and the answer I got was, when you left the order, they weren't going to do anything about it. I forget the exact wording. I wish I had remembered it, because it's really, really telling. They were more or less blaming me.
Sure.
And they weren't going to take any responsibility for it. So I wanted to confront the Mother Superior, because by that time Sister Olivia was dead. So I wanted to confront the Mother Superior who had done it. So I wrote them a letter, and because she was at the time teaching psychology for Mount Mary University, I chose to go to Mount Mary University and file the report there with I was going to go to the board of directors, but somebody convinced me to go instead to the president of the university, which I did. Mm-hmm. And we did have a meeting in which the Mother Superior apologized for what she had done. And she said if she knew then what she knows now, she would not have sent Sister Olivia, whose license had been revoked for practicing psychology, to act as a pastoral minister in a rural church.
Oh my God.
Not too different from what the priest did with some of the, what the archbishops did with some of the priests.
Right.
She said if she would not have done that. I believe she was sincere about being sorry for what she did. But I also feel I told them everything I went through. Do you realize how many thousands of dollars were spent in psychiatric care? What my children went through, what my husband went through. Nobody ever suggested doing anything monetarily. In fact, I had gone to them when I wrote my letter originally. The only thing I asked for them was, I said, my son is old enough, he's going to go to college, and I have used up all my money on therapy. Could you help me with financing some of his college? I agree. I thought that they could you know, work with the Jesuits and maybe work out he already had a partial scholar. If they could help, maybe, because I was kicked out of Mount Mary when I was left the order. So, you know,
Yeah.
and I was helped to get into Marquette University. So maybe they could do the same thing for my son, but of course they didn't. So,
Becky, were
that's
your
how it
children
sits now.
aware of the
I
abuse
did
issues? Were your children aware of this as they were growing up? Your children, were they aware of the abuse
Yes.
issues? They were. Okay.
Yeah, because I was on Oprah Winfrey. And so, you know, I can still remember my son, my youngest, coming home all excited. Because I was on Oprah Winfrey, you know.
Yeah.
He didn't understand, of course,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the concept. But yeah, they were, and I was, there were a lot of newspaper articles and things because I was fighting hard to get this law passed that would stop therapists from abuse.
Yeah.
So I made more headway on that than I've ever made on getting the church to acknowledge what they did and to realize that they should be making some recompense. Because we were raised as Catholics,
Mm-hmm.
that when you have done damage to someone, it's not okay to just say, I'm sorry.
Right.
When you've caused damage, you have to make restitution.
Yes.
And
That's the word that's forgotten.
That's what they do not know that. So and that's where it's right now. Excuse me, Kate. There is one more thing I did do after that meeting. I summarized what went on at that meeting. By the way, I had 4 witnesses, including the psychologist who really did help me. I sent a summary of that meeting that I asked to be placed in the archives of the university so that if anybody else would ever come forward with a complaint, that they would see that this has happened before.
Right.
And I never got an answer. I never even got an acknowledgement that they received it, and I know they received it. Yeah. So that's a nutshell. What my
you were speaking truth to power on various levels. The convent, the church, the university, the state. You really had several different battlefields going.
Yes.
What is it that you'd like to do now at this stage of your life? I know you want to make sure that others are not alone in this. Do you want to speak with the nuns again, or what is it that you want?
Well, I think I've done all I can with them. If it doesn't come from them to come with any kind of restitution, I'm not going to pursue it legally.
Okay.
I'm just too old for that.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing to me right now, and that's why I belong to the SNAP group, is the support of other people who have been through that, but also to offer them my support. You can come out of it. You can be stronger than you were before.
Yes.
That's basically all I really want to do now. I don't want to.
And your experience is wonderful for people to learn about their options of what to do. I think it's important that each individual not feel pressured to do a legal case or pressured in any direction on how to heal. It's healing that's important for them. And there will be those who will pursue it legally and those who will pursue it in-house in the church to try and do it that way for their own reasons. I did that for many years, try to do it in-house. But everyone's going to have their different approach. And I think having your experience among the various survivors it's a wealth of information for them and options that they may not think of. Right. Now, well, let me ask you this. Since you're married and had a family of children, how did it affect your family life, if it did at all, or your marriage?
Well, the day I attempted suicide, I was not coming home that night, and police were looking for me. My mother and sister came over to the house, and the kids were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They certainly knew what was going on.
Yeah.
My children lost. There's only one that's still in the church. Now the others are
Mhm.
have faith, no more faith in the Catholic Church than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. That's a normal reaction, I think, and yeah.
In some ways, I consider that a blessing.
Well, yeah.
My eyes were open to the hypocrisy there, and it made me question some of the other things that I was deeply embedded in me because I went through the entire parochial school system all the way up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I questioned a lot, and I'm glad I did. And to me, that part is a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know when my daughter was going into middle school from elementary school, unlike where I grew up, you went through elementary school and right into high school. Out here in rural PA, you go to middle school. So we talked about it. I said, so much of our experience in Catholic schools through the years was positive, was wonderful. I said, I'd like for her to have at least that option, to have some good memories of, Catholic teaching or Catholic schools. So we decided to enroll her in a Catholic school for the 1 year of middle school. When I got to the school, none opened the door to her office for me to go in, the principal, and I had a flashback. And I said, "Oops, sorry, sister, you look busy.
Yeah.
I'll come back another day." I haven't been back yet. We kept her in public school, but it was a real trigger just seeing this nun, and I thought, I got in the car and I said to my mother, my daughter is never, ever going to be around nuns. But
I have a similar story. Kate, I have a similar story. First of all, my oldest son is extremely bright. So by the time he went to school, first grade, he was already reading at the 5th grade level, and he was tested, and that true. So we went over to the first grade meeting with the teacher, with the whole group. And afterwards, I went up to her and I said, "Now, my son is already reading at a pretty high level. I don't know what to do." And she pointed to the alphabet on the top of the blackboard and said, "We're going to learn the alphabet." And I thought, this is never going to work. This is never going to work. My kids ended up in the public school as
in
well.
one ear and out the other. Yeah. Well, and it's a shame because, I mean, the Catholic school system that we went through in New York was excellent. I mean, we all got a good education.
Yeah.
But you had to. Certain states required that the Catholic schools had to pass a regents to have a diploma that was a state recognized diploma. And the nuns in New York were like, we got to pass that regents. You have to pass by 65. In our school, the kids have to pass by 75. We'll show you what we do. So you got a good education. And
I don't deny.
Yeah.
I don't deny that
Yeah.
education was good. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of it depends on the area and that, and you have to make up your own mind with the kids. But my daughter is not Catholic anymore either. And actually, after her graduation from college, she worked for 5 years for Cardinal O'Malley, right in the office in Boston. But she saw too much, knows too much, and between growing up in this house and having that experience, she's no longer Catholic. And that's her journey. But I only ask the question regarding family because I think that's a part of the issue that we often overlook, that victimization is not just the individual who was abused, but it's all of those.
Absolutely.
Yes, our family, our circle, maybe parents, our own siblings if we have them, and then the next generation, what we carry into a marriage. My goodness. If I didn't have the husband I had, I think I would have lost it. He was so supportive.
Well, I think about it. How many I spent over 2 years in the hospital during that, intermittently.
Yes.
During that time, my kids were little, and my husband was trying to hold a job and still take care of those kids. That you can't measure. You cannot measure what it cost.
That's right. That's the damage that has no price tag on it. But at the same time, how do we give restitution for stuff like that? you know, unfortunately in our world, it does boil down to a price tag if that's the apology that's given oftentimes. But it's not a bad thing. You know.
Well, it's not. My book isn't labeled a statute with limitations for nothing. By the time I had it made sense of all of this, a long exhausted statute of limitations. So
Yeah, and that's what comes up in all of these interviews and people we all know, that you're usually middle-aged by the time you're able to deal with this even, and sometimes even remember it for some people.
yeah.
You know, survival kicks in after you get over your youthful years. You got to work, you're raising a family, you have a career, there's various things that take precedence, and then middle age hits and reality kicks in. So
Yeah.
we have to deal with that. What would you like to see the church do about this? And my church, I don't mean only the hierarchy and the clergy. I mean the people who make up the church. What do you want them to know about nuns who abuse?
First of all, I want them to admit it. That would be a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to belong to a community of a lot of ex-nuns and ex-priests, and I have found acceptance for what I'm doing from them.
Yeah.
And that's a very positive thing. However, one member of them, who happened to be my classmate in the convent, said she felt sorry for the bishops because they didn't know what to do back then. That part bothered me because they did know what to do. They did know what, and Mother Superior did know what to, and if she didn't understand, she was being advised by the very nun who abused me.
Oh my God.
The Provincial Superior had her, you know, it's like, why didn't you call me? I'm not working on my master's degree. I could tell you all kinds of things. Oh, no contact. So I would like the church, first of all, to do what they've done. It's not just a church, but for the church to admit it's going on and that they owe the survivors something, and to stop fighting it.
Yeah, and stop using the excuse we didn't know back then. You know, to use the excuse, oh, we didn't know back then, what did we know? That's baloney, because that's like saying nobody knew slavery was wrong. You have a moral compass if you're, you know, hopefully if you're a Christian or a Catholic, you can have a moral compass, and, you know, you can't say you didn't know it was wrong. It's crazy.
I just remembered the sentence. When you left the order, you said that you signed a paper that you would never hold us responsible for anything. And believe it or not, that's true, Kate. I didn't know what I was doing. I was in an emotional state where I just needed out of there. I did sign a paper like that, never knowing the legal implications. I had no legal advice on it. I didn't know why I was signing it. I just wanted out of there. Yeah. Isn't that interesting that phrase would have, why I would have been asked to do that? Why would I be asked to sign something like that if they didn't realize that something was wrong here?
Yeah, they could be doing it for financial security as well, because some people who left, you know, went back to get money from them in charity, really, to help out until they got on their feet. I know my husband was not treated well when he left financially. Well, that's the story, but that's one thing. But I think also this legal responsibility, they know what goes on. As I've said to each person, you can't be in the convent for 2 weeks without knowing who's courting whom. You'd have to be blind or so innocent that you should not be even there yet. You should be someplace else where real innocent people live. Because the courtships that go on in the convent are blatant. I mean, and I think sometimes it's because their sexual immaturity, they don't always see it as a sexual interaction. They see it as, oh, we're best friends, you know. So you have these rules that say no particular friendships. You know where that came from. Oh, the exclusive friendships. So they knew what was going on. There's nothing new under the sun. You know, there were rules in the church against this kind of stuff 1,000 years ago. So they know what's going on better than we did.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Well,
So I don't, you asked me about what I want the church to do. I want the media to do something too. They did this movie on the deaf boys, Wisconsin, who were abused. I don't know if you've ever heard of
no,
that
I didn't
movie.
see that. No.
And they did that at the Milwaukee Film Festival, and they had the producers there also.
Mhm.
And I asked the question, why didn't you do something about the nuns who abused? And the only one that answered anything was a woman on the stage. And she said, yes, we really need to do that. My best friend, while I was going through, I mean, my best helper, while I was going through all these lawsuits and stuff, was a reporter. And I really appreciate the support I got from
Yeah.
the media and Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, the media can help a lot, and they need to do something about this. That's what
Yes.
I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and we've seen over in the early years how they helped bring the issue of married priests out into the open. That's what we were involved with. And I can honestly say the media that we've had contact with, all but one experience, all through these 35, 38 years, have all been people with integrity. They haven't been salacious. They've really tried to look at the issues and the human aspect of this and the results of it. So I think the media is the way to go. And many years ago, it was suggested to me by my own spiritual director, when the women come to you, you tell them, go to their bishop and tell the bishop, here's the story. You've got 2-3 weeks to make this right, to fix this situation, or I'm going public. That's 30 years ago he said that. I'm going public with the media.
The bishop didn't do any good for me.
No.
The bishop turned around. The bishop turned around and blamed me.
Yeah, yeah. But that's what this guy was saying. This priest was saying, and he was an old man at the time, and he was saying to me, you just tell them, if you don't get satisfaction, you go public. Now, he and I would say, go to the police first, and then go work with the church.
Yeah.
Back then, we were still, as Catholics trying to reform, we were thinking, trying to do it the right way. We trusted their goodwill, and we were mistaken to do that. That was a mistake. But we
yes, especially since that bishop later was accused of abusing someone. So that's the thing, is you come to him with a case of abuse, and then if they're the abuser, they're not going to do.
Well, I think that's the problem that comes up a lot, because why would anyone protect someone who abused a child or a youth or vulnerable to? Why would you protect an abuser unless you had a dog in this fight? Unless there was something that you were protecting of yourself. There's no integrity in a superior or a bishop who protects an abuser. And that's not to say that they should not have charity within their world and their obligations religiously, but charity doesn't mean protecting abusers. And that's what the nuns have to learn. It's not charitable to keep a rapist in your midst. Give him 3 squares and security until he dies. That's not charity. Charity is taking care of the victim. I'm not saying throw the guy to the curb. Abuses that, if they're sick people, they should be treated legally and psychiatrically.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
exactly.
This is such a shock.
They shouldn't be allowed to continue in an environment and abuse other people.
Exactly. And this is a shock, I think, with nuns. It's a shock to the people of the church, much more than the priest issue was. That was bad enough. With this issue of nuns sexually abusing people, that's hard to get into your head unless you've been through it, But it's hard to get into your head as a layperson who's trusting the nuns and sending your kids off with nuns. And what a shock to find that out. What a shock.
Yes, it's the whole question of, can women be abusers? Yes, they can be.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, that's a real issue. It's a broader issue, but it's very real. And hopefully what we're doing will bring that to the foreground as well. All right. Do you have any last words of wisdom that you would like people to know?
Uh, keep yourself educated. I think that's probably, I don't know how you educate people before it happens, but
Yeah.
to get a sense of what's right and wrong, and maybe that should be coming from parents. I don't know. But if I had only known then what I know now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But hindsight is 2020, isn't it? But we do know now, and what we're doing is trying to correct a horrible situation, I think, and go forward. So, well, thanks, Becky. I really appreciate your time with this, and you know, I'm hoping that everything we're doing here will help other people recognize stories within these interviews. Not everyone is going to connect with each person, but there's a cross branch of different types of abuse issues and memories that are being shared. And I think anybody who is looking for the courage to go forward legally, you're the person they need to look at. You know, you've had a lot of courage with this, so thank you. Everything.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, Kate. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I can't say it's a joy, but we're in it. We stay the course. So, all right. Thanks an awful lot, Becky. Once again, I'd like to thank you for staying with us to the end of this interview with Becky. As you can see, the scars and the wounds of sexual abuse that occur in youth don't ever end. Healing may occur, but the scars and the wounds are carried for a lifetime. In most cases, sexual abuse victims do not come to the maturity and the solidity in their own life to confront these issues within their own heart and mind until middle age. By that time, most states have statutes of limitation that prevent justice from occurring, prevent the victims, the survivors, from seeking justice in the legal system. The scandal and the shame of the church is that they protect themselves by the legal system. The scandal and the shame is that the church itself does not come forward to help the victims or cooperate, and they are protected by states from doing so. That's the shame of the church. And when I say church, I don't just mean the hierarchy, I mean the whole people of God that make up the church. It's time we purge. We purge the perversion and the evil that assaults the young and the vulnerable adults. I hope that these interviews will help you to see the effects that this has on people, effects that it may have on people you know. If someone tells you that something's not quite right with sister, believe them. If you have a hunch, move on it, investigate, protect the children, protect the youth, and protect any vulnerable adults who, as in Becky's case, may be going for counseling and have further abuse there. Thank you for watching this. Please pray for the victims and the survivors of sexual abuse by nuns. And my personal request is that you pray for the abusers and the sisters, that they may purge this abuse from their ranks. Thank you.